Peter, you are here at Copenhagen World Pride today, and you've just been up on the stage talking about Pride history. We would actually like to hear, what is Pride and what is the origin of it?
The Pride, the Gay Pride, as it was originally called, is a commemoration of the 1969 riots in New York, where gays and transgender people rioted for 3 nights against police violence at the Stonewall Inn. There was a gay bar in New York, in Christopher Street in New York. So originally it was called Christopher Street Day or Stonewall Day, and they used sort of the slogan Gay Pride. And eventually it became known as Prides, and then after the city that it's in, Copenhagen Pride, London Pride, San Francisco Pride, and so on.
What do you think that it has of an impact here in Europe that they had this riot in the States?
Well, it had an impact very early on. There was a year after the riots in New York in 1969, there was a march in New York to commemorate the riots. That was the first gay pride parade. That was a year after the riots. And there was a Danish guy there, and also Danish people could read about the riots in magazines from the United States. And in 1971, they decided to also do a pride parade in Copenhagen. So the first pride parade is actually 50 years ago. And they do the same in Sweden, in Örebro. In Sweden, there's also a pride parade in 1971. In Norway, it takes a bit longer before there are pride parades there. So very early on, it catches on as a concept. And it goes to show sort of how the gay and lesbian movement, as it was called at the time, what became the LGBT movement, very early on sort of was an international movement that helped each other, aided each other, went to each other's demonstrations, and followed what each other was doing all around the world.
Like, when you look at it on the Pride as an historian, how do you see that it have changed from the beginning until what it is today?
It has changed in the way that it's become massively bigger. In 1971, it was probably around 100 people walking down Strøget, the main pedestrian street in Copenhagen. And today it's hundreds of thousands of people who are walking in the parades. So that is sort of the biggest difference. The second difference is that the media much more sort of covers it than they used to do. They covered the first Pride actually in 71. That came in the newspapers, and they was actually very friendly, the media coverage already in 1971. But of course the news coverage is much bigger because the whole thing is much bigger.
What do you think that the Pride have done to like gay and lesbian rights in Europe in general?
What Pride has always primarily been, and still primarily is the fight for visibility. Not so much sort of the fight for gay rights per se, that has been done through other channels. But in order to sort of get politicians to listen, you have to have visibility. You have to sort of show the world that gays and lesbians and trans people and bisexuals and asexuals and so on, that we exist. And otherwise, nobody wants to do anything for us. And if we just hide away, people think, well, then probably there is no problem. So visibility has always been the first step towards any kind of rights. And that is what Pride has been from the beginning.
Last question, like, what do you think that we still have to fight for? Like, aren't we like where we have to be, or is there still something out there?
In Denmark, gays and lesbians are no longer discriminated in law. Gays and lesbians can do the same things or not do the same things as everybody else. Trans people are still struggling to get right to decide over their own bodies and their own lives. So we also have to sort of look at, well, when we say that we have equality, who has equality? Gays, lesbians, bisexuals, transgender, non-binary. We are a lot more people now under the rainbow than the gay and lesbian associations of the 1970s. So I think yes, we've come very far. There's not much to fight for when it comes to gay and lesbian rights, but I think visibility will always be important because gays and lesbians and all LGBTQI people are always in the minority. So we always have to show the world that we're still here, we're still queer, and you still have to make space for us.
Rasmus, when you look at the pride flag as it is today, do you see that as a political statement or more like just as a symbol of equality and inclusion?
I mean, for me, a symbol for equality and inclusion is political, and so for me the rainbow flag is very important and political, of course, also because I think that's an easy way to show support for equality and diversity through the world, and this is why I think it's really important to have symbols like that.
There has been some internal debate in the LGBTIQ community about this flag not representing all. So a new flag has emerged with some new colors. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's good to have some development there, and if there are some communities within the LGBTI community who thinks that it is important for them also to get some new elements into the flag, then I think that's fine and great. And I mean, it should also be a symbol of development, right? And I think the LGBTI community and has or should always been open also for development and for inclusion, and this means also that the flag or the community should be open also in learning more. And I think that the World Pride, for example, is a good example for having different communities within the LGBTI communities also addressing their problems, and this is something I think we should take into account, and of course also in our symbol in the rainbow flag. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I think that I learned here at World Pride is that there's coming like tons of new flags. There is a flag for intersex, there's for transgender and all that. What do you think? Is it a good thing that you can now put yourself into or find a flag that represents you and specifically instead of just going under the rainbow?
Well, I mean, for me, it's both. Let's put it like that. I think it's good to have a common pride symbol flag, like the rainbow flag. I think it's good to develop it. But on the other side, if there are some other flags supporting the same message, then we should be inclusive and open for this.
I would like to ask you about the pride flag, because to many people it's a political statement, to others it's just a symbol of equality and inclusion. What is it to you?
Yeah, I think it has many layers on it, also because for me, I'm also a migrant here. I live here, but I come from another country where it's like the flag also has many layers of being that Western identity for LGBT rights, even though we know the history and so on, and it's not only a white thing or necessarily an American thing, or like it has been changing through the years. But I remember when I started queer activism, I had both that relation towards the rainbow flag, that it's not my identity, it comes from how queer people, or not queer for that, like LGBT people are seen in TV, in American series and European series, and for me my queerness was a more radical thing, an activist thing, a way of getting out. But at the same time, I remember also being just trying to find queer spaces and so on. You look for the flag and you try to see it, especially in places where you're oppressed as a queer person. You try to find that kind of small sign to go and reach out and find the safe space that you want. So I have a really, also personally, when I have some T-shirts and stuff with the rainbow flag, and I'm like, sometimes I feel like wearing them, and sometimes no, this is not me, and this is just pink washing, and this is companies using those colors to sell us things that we believe we need, but I don't need to put on myself a rainbow flag to say, hey, I'm queer. I'm just queer by saying I'm queer. I don't need to wear it all over me, but some days I'm like, today I feel like wearing the rainbow flag, so it's, yeah, I don't think it's that healthy, but relationship I have with it. Yeah. But the same is the acronym. I mean, LGBTI, like, it has the same statement for me as that kind of boxing people, and versus the word queer, that is more inclusive and more radical and more activist as in its sense.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about the evolution of the rainbow flag? Like now it has some new colors to it as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good attempt. It's a good try to be also more inclusive, because also, yeah, that's also what I mentioned about being brown in this country. I think the rainbow flag in Europe, or at least in Denmark, and knowing Denmark, and also Pride Square, and every year Pride, it's a very white dominated space and quite racist. So adding, for example, the brown and black to it is a good attempt to say, hey, actually we are trying. The same with the transphobia and queer and rejection of queer gender diverse people around Pride events, and the lesbian and gay events has been traditionally big in Copenhagen. So I think now that they are adding also the trans flag to the flag in Pride Square, I think it's a good attempt. But we still know it's about practice, not only just adding the color, and that's why we see now, even in World Pride, many of the local communities of people of color here in Copenhagen are actually boycotting World Pride. They're not marching the parade because they don't feel included. They feel that this space is quite racist and quite Islamophobic as well. So there's many dilemmas there.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is that we should actually maybe try to focus more on including, or what?
Yeah, and also taking the conscious decision of, for example, fighting racism in a space like this. I was reading the first day not rules, but the statement of the safe space of this space, and they have like no homophobia, no transphobia, no. They forgot to mention no racism, even in that statement. And it's also about making the space more accommodating and listening to the different communities. And that's, I don't think, I mean, they're trying, but there is a lot more to do. But it's also inherited in how our cities are. And Copenhagen is like this, so Pride is only exaggerating what is already there.
Peter, I would like to hear about the rainbow flag. Like, when we look at UEFA and the European Championships in football, they told that the Munich stadium wasn't allowed to have like the rainbow colors on their stadium. What do you think about that? And do you think that UEFA should be more open when it comes to statements like that?
I'm sort of split about it, because I think sometimes everything shouldn't be political, and I'm not myself a football fan, but I think that a lot of football fans would prefer that football wasn't political, but they could sort of have that outside of politics. But then again, football has always been political and will probably continue to be political, so maybe it's just not possible to keep it, away from politics. So I don't really know what to think about it, but they're doing so many other things. If they're already saying, well, we are fighting for inclusion, well, then they have to fight for inclusion, and that should. I think it's extremely important. There's room for gays and lesbians and all LGBTQI people in sports, and if that's the best way to do that, then we should do that. If there are other ways we can sort of make that happen, then we should also explore those other ways.
When you look at the flag, what does the flag mean to you personally?
I sort of came out as a gay man before the rainbow flag was everywhere. At the time, sort of, it was more the pink triangle. That was sort of the big gay and lesbian symbol that came from the concentration camps originally, but had been sort of reclaimed as a gay and lesbian symbol. I think rainbow flags are practical because you know what they symbolize. I guess I'm finding myself more and more thinking that it's a bit too much, that it sort of becomes a bit of a uniform. Everything that has to do with LGBTQI people is wearing the same uniform, and for me that can get a bit boring. It's not so creative just to sort of drab everything in a rainbow flag.
Do you like that all these new flags are popping up then? Like, you're not a big fan of the rainbow flag like as a uniform for LGBTQI people, but then we have like, I don't know, 12, 20 flags now. Do you think that is a better idea?
I'm not sure because it's sort of bad PR. It's too confusing. People can't follow it, and a brand should be immediately recognizable, and they're not anymore. You show them the non-binary flag or the bear flag, and ordinary people don't know what it means. They think, oh, that's probably something gay, but they're not sure what kind of gay it is. So, but I don't know. I think people should have the flags that they like to have, and if it works for them to use those flags, they should use them.
Nick, you're from Malta, and what does Pride mean to you as a Maltese?
So we are from ARC, Allied Rainbow Communities, and we organize Pride in Malta. So Pride for me, actually, if I can say a bit about my personal experience, I'm 52-year-old, and when I was brought up, I didn't know what was gay about. Back then there was no internet, nothing, So my actual first experience with Pride was when I went for a holiday. By coincidence, there was Mardi Gras in Sydney. And actually there, for the first time ever in my life, I felt like I am part of the mainstream, which I could breathe. I could breathe. And actually, Pride is something. Pride is very important, and I know sometimes I have discussion even back home. Malta is the #1 country on ILGA, and some of the young people, they tell us, but we don't need Pride anymore. Yes, we need Pride because our rights are built on sand. So all it takes is a change of administration, sometimes even a minister with the same of administration, and your rights will start to be blown away from the sand that they were built upon. So that's why I believe Pride should be there. Actually, I think Pride should not be something that it should be once a year. It should be people should be, be exposed what the gay people go through. And actually, I think Pride nowadays has a slightly different meaning as well, because like we were discussing before, how the cis male, which conforms with the mainstream beliefs of the straight world, might not have or might not experience homophobia as much as trans women, non-binary, and the other members so they are part of the community. They're part of the rainbow as well. So we need to stand up for these people as well.
So actually, as I hear it, Pride to you is something that you think that everybody should experience pretty much all the time, like being proud of who you are and be accepted.
Be proud and reminding people that our rights are built on sand. Gay rights, I believe that the gay rights are the only equal rights in the world that are built on sand. We saw this happening. We're seeing happening in European countries, even in America when there was a change of administration. These rights start to get slowly eaten away. It might not happen like this, at one point, but we might go back to the basics if we're not careful. So yes, we have to be out there. We have to make ourselves presence, because I believe it's very important.
And Malta is like the next one having the European Pride. Euro
the
Pride?
next one.
Not the next one.
Belgrade will be doing it in 2022, but we will be hosting Euro Pride in Valletta, our capital city, in Malta, in September 2023. Our main message is equality from the heart. And why equality from the heart? Malta is #1 on ILGA index, and we want our neighboring countries, especially the northern European countries and even like Turkey and even other EU member states, we want to share our experience. Like this today, actually, I had a very important discussion with a Polish guy, and he said they use Malta with Poland, that even Malta is a very Catholic. The Catholic religion is very strong in Malta. We still manage to be on the #1 ILGA. So Poland can do the same. So it's the excuse of the church. It's no excuse. Yeah. So we want to share our experience and make people aware that yes, having equality rights helps. Although equality rights doesn't solve the problem either. So, but it's good to have rights because I believe the legal basis start the change as well.
Yeah. So what does it mean for you and your organization to have Euro Pride to Malta?
It means a lot because for the Pride in Malta is been growing slowly and it's getting bigger and bigger, and this will be our main big event, and I think it will put Malta as well on the main picture, not only for rights but even for celebrating Pride, you know. So we would like to welcome you all to come over to our sunny island. I don't think I need to advertise Malta from a touristic perspective, but it's a place where we provide a safe space as well for by nature the Maltese. We always like to welcome people, and I'm sure we will make you welcome on our island.